I just wish we could look hard at the unintended consequence of everything that we do. You've heard me say this 1,000 times in the last 10 years, 12 years, 13 years. It was when President Obama was first running. And people used to say, you know, Dan, you should be in Washington, and what are you going to do? And what would you, and somebody asked me once, what would be the only job that I would ever take? And I said, I'd like to have the job as chairman of the Unintended Consequence Committee. There's no such thing, by the way. So it's easy for me to say I would do that. But I can't believe the total inability for politicians and really, really smart businessmen who get to Washington and start thinking immediately, not after a year, not after 5 years, immediately start thinking like politicians. And the notion that we can't think of the unintended consequence of what we do is absolutely pathetic. And I'm so sick of being able to follow a trail of trouble backwards and realize that it all started because of a false narrative without even giving thought or consideration to the unintended consequence of that narrative. I'm so sick of it because we should have our biggest and brightest in Washington. Instead, we have very much the opposite. Well, I can't get a job in the real world and I don't want to work that hard, so I'm going to be a politician. Not everybody. I'm not saying everybody by any stretch of the imagination. There is a remnant in Washington of good men and women. We need to raise up more. There's a fellow that is running for Congress in Oregon, in the 2nd District of Oregon. Primary, I think, is in May. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's in May. His name is Jason Atkinson. He's just one of a few that are running in a primary for the Republican nomination to be able to run in the general election in November that has the ability, has a desire, and has the heart maybe to be one of those remnant, one of those men that are going to stand with the other men and women that are still a remnant. And we know, listen, we know anything about Scripture, we know what God can do with a remnant. So I know I always say everybody in Washington, all those in Washington, everybody on Capitol Hill. I know I do that all the time. Please don't correct me. I know I'm doing it. But I'm hoping that the majority of you listening that have listened to me understand and know my heart and have heard me say so many times, I do understand there's a remnant. I do. It doesn't make me any less frustrated at the ones that are very far from being a remnant of God, even though God can use them as well. But when we have somebody in a part, particularly in a state like Oregon, where we need more conservative values, like Jason Atkinson running against 2nd District in Oregon, who, by the way, is pro-life. We need some of that in Washington, Oregon, and California. We need that out on the West Coast. And there's somebody. Will they, the people in that district, are they going to vote in the primary? Let me just tell you something, folks. I know we're waiting all for November. The most important election you're going to vote in is in a primary. It's the most important election. It's the primary where we make a difference. It's the primary. By the time we get to the general election, so I use again the example of the 2nd District of Oregon for the House. The time we get to the general election, it's too late. There's nothing you can do about it. You're a Republican, you're probably going to, either vote a straight Republican ticket or you're going to vote for whoever the Republican nominee is on the ballot. It's the primary that we have the option and the choice. I know I have listeners in the 2nd District of Oregon. So please vote in the primary. I want you to vote for Jason Atkinson because they're the kind of men that we need. Hey, remember to click the subscribe button right here on the screen. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new content is added. And more importantly than anything, you don't want to miss all 3 live hours of Financial Issues every day from 9 to noon. And you can watch it on FISM.tv. That's FISM.tv.